The stream is
Hey,
live.
absolutely. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Intentional Carnivore. It's good to see everybody. I hope you all have had a great day. I have. I've been looking forward to this conversation with my friend Steven, and I'm honored to have him here. And I know you guys are going to learn some great stuff and be encouraged as well. Thank you, Steven. I know it's late for you, but taking the time out to jump on here and chat with me, and I appreciate you. And glad you were able to make it.
Yeah, I'm glad I was able to make it after being an idiot and getting the fact that you were 5 hours behind me rather than in front of me. So I went on earlier today and realized that I'd messed up. But I'm going to blame the blazing hot sunshine, and it just went to my head today. So, yeah, I'm really excited, and it's really nice to see you. And I want to say the same thing I just said before we started, which is you do look like you've just lost weight again since we spoke on my channel.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride, man. Honestly, I'm just making good choices, staying consistent, and man, I feel better than I ever have, honestly. And so it's almost like it's not even work, honestly.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I've just and I'm not recommending this to everybody. I just tried a dry fast a couple of days ago. Which I've never done. 5 years carnivore. I've done fasting, but I've never tried a dry fast. And I would have to say, I thought it was amazing. It really felt good. For looking sharp, it's ever so good. My serratus muscles, the boxer ones, which are sort of here, popped out. So I think we're always learning, aren't we, Sean? I mean, that's the thing. He said we're going to learn stuff, but I think 5 years into it and 10 years of low carb, basically, I still feel like I learn every day, and I love talking to people like yourself and listening to different influencers. There's always something going on, and I think, yeah, I'm open to that. I'm going to listen to that.
Absolutely. I tell you, the minute you think you've learned it all or you know it all is the minute you start backing up is what I try to operate under. For anybody, I guess I should say, could you just give a little bit of information about kind of who you are and your background for anybody in the audience that might not know or be familiar with you?
Yep. Well, I go by the name of the UK Carnivore, or Coach Stephen, as you can see in my title there. I've got an honours degree in Physiology and Health Sciences. I'm a specialist practitioner in diabetes and obesity. I'm a qualified phlebotomist and level 4 personal trainer. I've trained people in the Olympics, throwing javelins, basically. Like I say, all of those things I qualified it in later life. To talk about my own personal health journey, I was a great believer in high carb, low fat. In my 20s, I did a bodybuilding show. I can remember reading Muscle and Fitness and seeing that the bodybuilders. I'm 60 next year, by the way. So this was in my 20s, so a long time ago. And I can remember flicking through and seeing that some of the bodybuilders were going to use high fat as their strategy. And I can remember going, well, that's never going to work, and completely dismissing it and absolutely bought into the high carb, lean protein, no fat thing. All right. So that was before, like I say, I got all the qualifications and started to learn. And in my 20s, I think I looked pretty good. I was, athletic. I was semi-pro footballer or soccer player, I should say, for the American people out there. And, I was fit. I was healthy. I looked all right. But I think in the background, what people don't realize is the things like this freshly squeezed orange juice, the oatmeal, skimmed milk, fruit, everything. I did it all wrong, but I was doing it all right according to the guidelines. Anyway, fast forward to my 40s, really, and I started to realize that things weren't going how I wanted them to go. Like I say, personal trainer, so I was running 3 times a week, 10 miles every, and I was getting plumper. And then I started doing my qualifications, and strange enough, although the diabetic training, for instance, was still heavily into talking about carbohydrates and covering your carbohydrates with insulin, because I'd come from the outside to do these qualifications, I was putting my hand up and saying, well, this doesn't make any sense. Why are we eating something that needs a lot of meds? Why don't we just drop them? In fairness to the textbooks, they did cover their butt, because when I've gone back and looked over, there is little bits about low carb, but mainly, even though I've got those qualifications, basically I had to write stuff I didn't believe. But I started to realize that carbohydrates were problematic. And I suppose the kicker was I went and had a calcium arterial, a coronary artery calcium scan. And you've got to remember, I'd never smoked, I'd never drunk, I'd never eaten fat. It was all lean protein, rice cakes, all that stuff, orange juice, like I say. And my CAC was 639. My waist was just expanding. When I got my qualifications to be a phlebotomist, I then realized that I was, on my way to being diabetic. I was pre-diabetic, which is actually a sort of PR stunt to get you to worry. But anyway, so yeah, I was pre-diabetic. I used to have a big rash here, which looked like somebody had got a strawberry and smashed it on my face. I had athlete's foot. My hearing, by the way, I'm deaf, I lip read, I wear hearing aids. My hearing was just getting worse and worse and worse. I had terrible tinnitus. So I discovered low carb. And I know a lot of people don't really like this person. I think he's a great gateway into low carb, but I started to watch Eric Berg. And Eric Berg, I thought was a pretty good start. I like some of his information. He's easy to listen to, whether you love him or hate him. The quality of his videos and information is pretty good. There are some things I don't agree with, but that got me into low carb, and within literally weeks, things started to improve. And I know this story, and Sean, your story is much more wow. But to me, it was a lot of tick boxes were happening. I was losing the weight, the tinnitus was getting better. I wasn't as fat. I was losing weight, which was good. The rash started to go. My athlete's foot got less, and then because that seemed to work. And I'm sorry, this is a very long thing, but it's my whole life now. Like I say, 59, from 20 to 59. It's going to take a little bit of time. I thought, well, if I cut some carbs out and get some really good results, what if I go keto? What if I go to lower carb? What's going to happen there? So I went keto, and looking back, the problematic thing with keto is the keto treats and having your foot in that camp of sweetness, one foot over here and one foot over here. And keto was good. When I look back at pictures of me when I was keto, that's the worst I looked on my low carb journey, because I think with low carb, I was all right. Keto, I seemed to look a bit gaunt, and I think I was reliant on keto treats. And then when I got to age 55, I decided to train as a online carnivore coach and a fasting coach, and joined MeatRx, trained by Sean Baker. Did that, became one of the top coaches there at MeatRx. I know it's Rivero now. And then one of the coaches left. I became the top coach there, and carnivore was life-changing, absolutely life-changing. And in the last 4 years of being carnivore, and by May of next year it'll be 5 years, even in that time, I've learned many things along the way. So I learned that if you're 95% carnivore and then you go 100%, it's not a 5% improvement. It's more than 5%. So it's like a logarithm, really, rather. So when people say, well, I'm 80% carnivore, and I know you did really well with sloppy carnivore, that's pretty good. 80% carnivore is going to get you a long way. But when you're 90% carnivore, it's not an extra 10%. It's even more. And I think that's the thing that surprised me. And even 2 birthdays ago, I learned about food freedom by making sure I was eating enough, which is counterintuitive. People come to this and they think, I've been told to eat less and move more, and people are telling me to eat till I'm stuffed, and that's no good. I'm just going to put on weight. And of course, it is the type of food you eat, not the amount does matter, but because it's very difficult to overeat fat and overeat protein. I think just listening to your hunger signals, that seems to really work. And then, like I say, with the fasting, I've just done the dry fast. I did some intermittent fasting. I've heard some nice things about fasting. Real kicker was the tinnitus went, which, I had a moment where I got a bit emotional out on a walk with my wife. And I just said to her, can you hear that? And she went, what? And I went, nothing. It's actually silent. And I'd never had that for, let's say 40 years, something like that. And my audiologist, same machine, same audiologist, he noticed my hearing was actually improving. For all my life, it's got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And then I went carnivore and it started to improve, which he'd never seen before, which is a really common thing. Medical professionals not seeing something ever before, but he wouldn't have it that it was because I'd gone carnivore. So anyway, could have been a coincidence. Absolutely. Could have been fluke. But then it happened the following year. Still could have been coincidence. Can't prove it. But that's a very long story. I tried to compact it. So lots of things that's gone, obviously. I think, I still got my hair and all this, and it's got darker again. It did go very, very grey. To the point where when I was first doing online coaching, I'd get a bit of mascara and push it through and get rid of all the grey. Well, that I don't have to do that anymore. So lots of good things. Athlete's foot has gone, tinnitus gone, sight's got better, skin's got better. I had lower left quadrant pain as well. I lost both my parents when I was really young. My mum to colon cancer. She had a 9-pound cancer growth. She was plant-based pretty much, eating bran flakes and skim milk and orange juice and all that. Died very young. And when I got lower left quadrant pain, in my 40s, I can remember having a colonoscopy and thinking, well, I lost both my parents to cancer. It's going to happen to me. I mean, I can remember that. I can literally remember in my 40s thinking, well, it is genetics. I don't believe that, by the way, anymore. Not at all. About genetics and cancer. I think there's a lot of more to be said about it, but anyway, I won't get to that. But yeah, so I had the lower quadrant pain. That went as well. Any bloating, everything is better. There's nothing that is not good. And the community, and I can see from all your people coming on and doing lots of comments, the community is the best as well. Absolutely the best.
Absolutely. We got about 63, 65 in here right now. And I want to welcome everybody. If you will, hit that like button and push the video out for us. We appreciate that. You said so much that I appreciate and so much that I want to touch back on. The first thing, number one, you don't have to apologize at all for it being a long story, because your story, while it may be different from mine, is no less important, because it's real life and it's your life, and that's important. And I value other people's stories, and you take all the time you want. Second of all, the whole, I was on a live with Carrie from Homestead How earlier this past weekend, and they started talking about the people, Maggie, that Dr. Chapey did an interview with last week, being up in age. And I said, my goodness, I was like, I don't know if he qualifies for up in age, but he's a little bit older than I am. But I said, have you seen Steven? This guy is absolutely ripped. He's buff, and like I see you with the guns out. Like, yeah, man. I was like, he's 55 or later. I was like, he's just thriving. And so that's the first thing I thought of when I was making the thumbnail. I was like, can you thrive on carnivore? And the answer, apparently, obviously, is yes, an undeniable yes. So that, and he also talks about that 5% that you were talking about. That last 5% makes a huge difference, because I mean, in long story short, when we look at our life, I've watched a lot of your stuff, and I know that you were super skeptical coming to this way of eating, and so was I. I have a health background. Not in nutrition, but a health background. And I know what the recommended, your fruits, your vegetables, and a balanced approach. But I was super skeptical about this. And that crazy doctor, Ken Berry, that I came across, who I love so dearly for being an honest person, the more I listened, the more it changed. And so, but ultimately, the big thing was trying it, right? That's what made the difference. It didn't take very long for you to see a difference in your body, me as well. So I think that's critical for everybody, is if we can just get folks to try it for themselves, I believe it speaks for itself.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I did a 30-day challenge, basically. When I first went carnivore, I thought, well, I'll do it for 30 days, see what happens. You're right about Dr. Berry, by the way. So I feel a bit bad that I haven't mentioned other influencers that definitely pushed me along and inspired me. So, and thanks for that. I mean, Ken Berry was instrumental in the keto side of things. You know, I can still remember him saying, eat your greens, and all that sort of stuff. And I know he doesn't regret it, but he mentions that that's not what he thinks so much now. And I notice you've got his t-shirt on, the proper human diet, which is great. And, you know, when Paul Saladino started, he was very good. You know, he's gone off the boil now completely and utterly, but he was pretty good. I'm trying to think of any other influences. And I suppose now I would look at Dr. Chafee's material. I think he's very good. Obviously, I like Mark Kay. I like the humor and also, you know, takedowns of other videos. So there's lots of people to watch. That was very male oriented. I mean, you've got Kelly Hogan, who's really inspiring, Laura Spath as well. Yeah. You know, there's so many out there. Bella, Steak and Butter Gang. You know, many. Yeah, so many good places to get inspiration and you know, stay on track and stuff. But yeah, you're right. I was skeptical, but it's difficult to remember being skeptical because that 30 days, I stopped counting. I just thought, yeah, this is it. This is great. And then whenever you want to do something off carnivore, you know, I've done a few experiments for YouTube to say, you know, I'm going to introduce these back. How's it going to go? And I dark chocolate, you know, I put that back in with yogurt and caffeinated coffee 2 years ago in May for a video I was doing with Coach Raymond. And I put on 27 pounds. I mean, it was just horrendous. I mean, he's deliberately trying to put on weight for this experiment. And then over 18 weeks, you know, lost it all and then lost even more, that sort of thing. And I've done the same thing recently. I sort of introduced some carbs just to see. You don't need carbs to build muscle. You don't need carbs for athletic performance. That's absolutely nailed on, completely and utterly. You don't need carbs. But I introduced some carbs to just see what would happen. And I can't tolerate them. I don't want to tolerate them. But, you know, if I have them, I don't feel as good. I don't perform as good. You know, the things come back, you know, the itchy skin, that comes back very quickly. So I know I don't need them, and I also know I don't want them. And I think that's the thing. You can keep reminding yourself by having the things you used to eat. And they don't taste as good. They don't look as good anymore. You know, if I could have a ribeye, I'll have a ribeye and I'd love it. You know, fillet steak, love it. Fish, I had fish tonight. I had surf and turf. So there's so many lovely things to eat. You know, you can eat butter, and you can just eat eggs, and it's a fantastic way of eating. I mean, it's tasty, it's so sustainable, it's so filling. You don't think about food all the time, you know. Yeah, and the fasting is another one. I remember when I did my personal training qualification. I can remember being in the room there. And I think maybe, you know, maybe I'm underselling myself. There were things I was interested in, even when I was doing that, and I wasn't even low carb. And I can remember saying about fasting, and to a person in that room, you can't fast. Fasting's terrible. Well, fasting is great. You know, if you've eaten enough beforehand, that's the thing. Not under eating, actually. I think if we was to say one thing. A problem. People under eating is the biggest problem. You've got to eat enough. You've got to eat the right amount for you. Don't worry about what Sean Baker's eating. If you're, you know, 5'11" and you're not athletic, you do not need 5 pounds of meat. You don't. So you eat to what you need, how hungry you feel, what makes you, you know, feel satiated and what you find tasty. And I think that's another thing. It should be tasty to you.
That's one of the things that I love. You mentioned Raymond Azan. I absolutely love that about them. You know, and what they teach with the Steak and Butter Gang and his priming protocol. I think it's one of I mean, that's essentially what I was doing, but I didn't know to call it priming. I didn't call it priming. I just called it I thought it was eating till satiation, and that's what I heard Ken Berry say to do. And so that's what I was practicing. I ate for the first, like, I probably much longer than I should have, because it was for a month and a half, 2 months. But I got to the same point that you essentially are trying to get to, is I got to the point where I couldn't stand to see another bit of food. I was so full from eating 3, 4, whatever times a day. My nutrients had got replenished over that month and a half, almost 2 months, and my body was happy, and it's sending me all the signals. Hey, you've filled me up with the nutrients. You could stop now. And so it didn't look good to me, and so I cut back, and I went to 2 meals a day, and I or whatever. I haven't tried a lot of the fasting that they talk about, but I'm learning about it now, and in all honesty, the reason why I haven't tried any fasting was because I found a super sweet spot that my body was happy with, and I didn't want to change anything because I felt good. I was getting the benefits that I wanted. My performance was fine. Everything was improving. My labs were coming back right. And so I was like, I am not tweaking anything. And the very few times that I did, things started changing. Either my weight would slow down from my weight loss, or I wouldn't feel as good or whatever. So I went right back. I'm like, no, I'm listening to my body. My body's happy here, and I'm not moving. And so that's one of the big things.
Yeah. I think, Raymond was very good to come up with the terminology, I think. But it is eating until you're satiated. I was just looking in the chat there. Somebody mentioned Chat GPT. If you ask this AI thing, what's the best way to eat for optimal health and longevity, you've got to remember it's just going to mainstream resources. It's not going to mention carnivore, because it's AI, but all it's doing is looking at lots of things on the internet. So, just the other thing there, London Vikings then says hunger is the best seasoning. And I think that's really true. If you're properly hungry, you really enjoy your meal, don't you? But absolutely. I'm not saying that you have to fast, by the way. So people, you don't have to fast, but I think it's the same as exercise. You don't have to exercise, but they're really good things to do. Sometimes, if you're having a little bit of a weight loss stall, a bit of fasting can help. If there's belly fat is one of those things that people hate and talk about. That's where fasting can help, and it doesn't have to be 7 days. It can be, one of the things I heard recently, and I like this phrase, is it needs to be like a night, a day, a night. And I think that's really good, because that's really quite manageable. You stop eating, tonight, 6 o'clock. You sleep, then you have a day, and then you have another sleep, and you start eating again. Easy. That's really easy. But there you are. You've knocked out of the park, a 36-hour fast, because you've utilized both the times you're sleeping. So I think that was good. Yes, I like that phrase, and that's something I learned recently. So I'm going to use that quite a lot. A day, a night, a day, a night.
A day, a night, a day, a day, a night, a day. That's good stuff. And in all fairness, I didn't do extended fasting, but I did do intermittent fasting, because that, like I said, that's when I started it, and that was great for me. It was like 16-8 or whatever, and then I tightened it up, and I went to like 24, 20 and 4. And then, and I just kept going down until I eventually tried OMAD. I didn't really care a whole lot about OMAD. It didn't work as well for me for what I like. So I just went back to TUMAD in a 20 and 4 window. And so that's, you don't know until you try. Sometimes the way you start out changes along the journey, and you have to reassess, readjust, and see what does, improve it. What you work with people and you coach, all the different, hats that you wear. What is one of the biggest obstacles or oppositions to them finding success that you see the most?
Oh, that's a great question. I can't give you a simple one. I'm sorry, because I have quite a mixed bag of coaching. I think fighting the mainstream, but that's like friends or family, who are well-meaning, or doctors. That's going to kill you, sort of thing. And I always use this when I'm being interviewed, but it sort of sums up what I encounter ever such a lot. I'll have someone say they've done really well with the coaching, and next week I've got to go to my physician, and I'll get back to you to tell you what happened. And then when that happens, when they get back to me, they say, well, I went in there and they said, wow, you look great. And I say, yeah, I dropped 60 pounds. My blood pressure is normal. I don't need my blood pressure meds anymore. You know, I can fit into clothes I haven't fitted into for the last 20 years. I feel amazing. I'm sleeping really good. And the physician will say, and what are you doing? And they'll say carnivore. And they'll say, well, that will kill you. Despite the evidence in front of them, you know, and this is the thing. I think that is possibly the most difficult thing to overcome, because like with the phlebotomy side, someone will send me labs and they'll say, oh, my cholesterol's high. And I say, high according to who? Because maybe this is where it should be, because when it goes high, when LDL goes high, all the other markers improve. So why would all these other markers improve and LDL go high? Why would that happen when everything else is getting better? Of course, one of the things that's not talked about is the plant sterol. So when you have plants in your life, because they have a sort of they mimic LDL cholesterol, you have a plant sterol. It's actually artificially low. So as soon as you take the plants out, LDL comes back to where it should be. So it's not really high. It's actually where it should be. So I suppose it's that mainstream, the way they constantly talk about things, and you're not supposed to question it, because someone will say, well, your cholesterol's high. So that sounds scary, but actually it isn't high. And if it is high, why are all the other things better? Why is your skin better? Why is your sleep better? Why is your anxiety gone? You know, there's so many good things that happen. So I suppose that would be one thing. And the other thing is undereating. You know, being really scared of eating good levels of protein, good levels of fat, eating eggs, all the things that they've been scared of, scared away from. And you need those nutrients. So if you're trying to heal your thyroid, for instance, 50-year-old woman, you know, low carb or keto, carnivore, whatever, you know, you're using that to fix it because you've had years of low calorie or low fat. You need fat to make your hormones, and you know, they're all basically fats are the precursors to the hormones. So once you give your thyroid the raw materials it needs, it's going to heal. So then you get into this. Well, I've started to lose weight, but I don't want to eat so much. You know, I'm worried about putting on weight again. And I find that very difficult, because I'm saying, well, you know, you are looking better, or you're feeling better, and we're trying to fix your thyroid. So you've got to eat the nutrients it needs to do that. It's an organ, you know, it needs protein, it needs fats. So just making sure people eat enough, even though they want to lose some weight. Does sound counterintuitive, but it's eating enough of the right things. That's the thing. You can eat a ton of junk and you will put on weight, but you can eat a fair bit of protein and a fair bit of fat and still lose weight.
Absolutely.
Fat,
and
it's not about weight.
Oh, I added so much more fat to the way that whenever I started eating this way, even up until I only started cutting back on the amount of butter that I added to my fatty ribeyes already recently, just because it was started to cause an issue where I felt like I was getting too much and it was sending me to the restroom, you know, a good bit. And so I said, well, maybe it's time for me to start cutting back just a little bit, you know, because, you know, everybody always says if you've got a lot of fat to burn, don't add a lot of fat. Well, I can assure you, I was adding a good bit of fat to what I was eating, those fatty ribeyes that I was eating every day already, and adding butter to the egg yolks that I was eating. I was adding a lot of fat, as much as I could stand the whole time that I was losing weight. And it was almost like it was supercharged. So, will it work that way for everybody? I don't know, but that's definitely how it worked for me. And it was just supercharged. Now I was like I say, I was extremely strict. I had beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. That was it. Like I didn't have the dairy. I didn't have all the other things. I stuck strictly to the beef, butter, bacon, eggs. And that was it, you know? But that's how it worked for me. So, you know, I think we get in those mindsets of the things that we try to bring those little bitty ideas from the other ways we knew prior to eating carnivore or eating keto ketogenic way of eating, the proper human diet, if you will, with us when we try to start eating this way. And we have to basically throw some of that stuff, if not all of that stuff, out the window and start over. And it makes a huge difference. So, but it does absolutely change everything. I never thought I would be able to just eat steak and eggs and butter consistently. And somewhere along that route, along the way, the things that I didn't care much for or have a taste for before in my life, all of a sudden, that's the things that I desire the most. It flips it on its head. So, I don't know that if we can get that mind shift and take care of the mind is the biggest thing that I feel like we fight, in the process. And if we can get that under control, there's nothing we can't accomplish when it comes to changing our lives and changing this way of eating, I believe.
Yeah, I just a couple of bits of the chat there. I think it was Lulu Bug said that she struggles to eat enough. We can always eat smaller meals with a bit more frequency if you're having trouble, and I think going back to the fat thing,
Yeah.
I mean, eating fat will give you the energy to burn fat, which is,
There you go.
There she is. Tend to undereat. I'm not hungry.
Or can't eat very much at one time. Yeah. I think it's slowing down my progress with carnivore. Any suggestions? What would you say to Lula Bug?
Yeah, I would smaller meals with more frequency, and don't sweat over it. Just because for most people, see TUMAD, what you just said, TUMAD, IMAD tends to work for most people. But if you, for instance, your gallbladder has been removed and your bile production is not good and you're quite new to carnivore, well, your fat absorption might be a little bit compromised, and that can mess people up as well. So if you're not feeling hungry, then just have a little meal. And I think what will happen is your satiety signals will start to happen more and more if you do that. Small meals with more frequency, because you do need to eat enough to fix yourself. I think that. And someone there was saying about they're trying sprinting as well. Carnivore seal there. I mean, that's something that I've reintroduced. I know it's a bit trendy at the moment. But it's a great form of exercise if you haven't got much time. And I want to just say about intensity. If you can't get out of a chair, then getting out of a chair is an intense exercise. Just because there's people looking mega fit and ripped and stuff saying you've got to do HIIT training, intensity is very much individual. So don't look at that and think, I'm stuck in a chair, I can't do anything, because getting out, like I say, getting out of the chair is an intense exercise for you. So getting out of the chair 3 or 4 times in a short period of time is going to get you out of breath. That's an intense exercise. And don't judge yourself against other people. You've just got to be better than you. You've just got to improve every day. Small, be patient. Don't worry about what other people think, and be inventive. Just think of, I do exercise programs for people. Like I say, I've had people in Zimmer frames going from Zimmer frame to walking. All right. Well, walking from there. So I know that's probably not your lounge. That might be a green screen. But right, walking from that couch to that piano could be a big deal for someone.
It was for me.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so absolutely. I couldn't. You know my story. I mean, I couldn't walk 20 to 30 seconds, and I would start going numb. Walking to the back bedroom of my house was how I started. My first goal when I started getting off the couch was to make it to the door and back to my couch, walking back and forth for more than 2 minutes. Now, and that may not seem like a big deal to a lot of people that's out here going to the gym and working and getting out. I had literally laid on that couch for 3 years. I couldn't take a shower. So, that it was a big deal. 2 minutes worth of straight walking. And at first, guess what? I couldn't do it. But I understood the concept of you can lay there in misery for the rest of your life, or you can grow and move out of it. I mean, it was a concept. I had surrendered defeat, and I was laying on the couch waiting to die. Basically, is where my life was. And so there just came a point when it's like, you don't have to live this way. And that's the message for everybody. That's the takeaway, you don't have to stay that way. You may not be able to go out and run 30 miles. You may not be David Goggins out here running 200 miles and, stay hard. You may not. I'm not either. I'm not there either. I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not where I was. You have to start somewhere. You have to move out from where you are. You have to take that first step, because that first step is going to lead to the second step. And you might only get 20 in, but tomorrow you might get 21 in. And if you just take one more every day, eventually that's going to add up, and you're going to see that consistency pay off. You're going to see that discipline pay off, and you're going to see that dedication pay off. And before long, you're going to be just like me. I couldn't walk to the back room of the house. And before I, started working 2 jobs and staying up all night and doing the things that I'm doing now, I was walking upwards of 10 miles a day, every day. So it makes a big difference, but you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, that's it. You've got to start somewhere. The expert was a beginner once, and that's the thing. It is all about not worrying what you're seeing on the internet and worrying about influencers who look ripped or competing in bikini shows or whatever. If you look in the mirror and you don't like what you see, then you can take steps, literally steps, and just do the right thing, eat the right things. So it all boils down to, this is very simplistic, but if you keep your insulin low, all right, then you can burn fat. When there's insulin in your system, that's the fat storing hormone. And this is physiologically very, very layman's, but that's the bottom line. So you keep your insulin low, you're going to burn some fat. That's it. That is really it. And become a fat burner. And don't worry about eating protein and fats, because they don't really do much to your insulin. And I know there's people out there saying, well, yeah, some protein, some amino acids will spike your insulin a bit. Nowhere near what carbohydrates do. Yes, you'll get a reaction, but there's no comparison between protein and carbohydrates. So once you cut out the carbs and you cut out that and you do a little bit of activity just to get, so what happens in the cells, right? This comes from my diabetic practice more than anything. You have a cell and it wants to take glucose in, and it has receptors on the edge, on the membrane. And when you exercise, there are receptors in the cell that aren't on the membrane, and they translocate, which is a posh way of saying they go from the middle to the membrane and they allow more glucose in. So when you're training someone to be more insulin sensitive, and you say exercise, well, why does exercise work? They think it's because you're moving. Well, it is, but that isn't really what it is. It's because that's why you can have people doing long runs and not losing the weight. It is about stimulating the need for a bit more glucose, which is why the high intensity workouts are better for people. But like I say, intense for you, that's the key. Your body, your central nervous system has got to say, this person, so we'll use you, Sean, as an example. We're used to 3 years of this person lying on the couch, so we haven't got to get lots of glucose into that cell. We'll just keep it high because it can't get into the cell. It doesn't need to go into the cell. Oh, hang on a minute, he's getting off the couch. Well, we've got to provide a bit more glucose in the cell. We've got to do that. How are we going to do that? There's loads already in the system, but it's not getting in the cell. Oh, I know. We'll put a receptor on the membrane. That's it. It's really that simple.
Nice.
And if people get into sort of buying a glucose monitor, or they're lucky enough to have a CGM or whatever, if you're into biohacking, you'll realize it's a really strange thing, because you can take your glucose reading before you exercise, and then you can exercise, not eat anything, and your glucose will go up. And you'll think, well, hang on a minute, that bloke's an idiot. He said it would go down, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that, yes, there will be demand for glucose, but more of it will get into the cell. And the more you keep doing that, the less it will go up in the first place, and the more it will get into the cell, and you'll become more and more insulin sensitive. And then your blood glucose, instead of going up and down, will start to become a flat line, which many people show. If they've got a continual glucose monitor, they're really proud to go on Instagram and go, look, I'm diabetic, but look at my blood glucose. It's like a flat line with a couple of little bumps. And that's what you're trying to get to.
Absolutely.
Small elevation of insulin to deal with what you're doing. That's it. Make yourself more insulin sensitive. This stuff about being sort of insulin resistant is really sort of more of a misnomer. It's you're not insulin sensitive. And I know that's sort of saying the same thing, but in a different way. You can improve your insulin sensitivity with a little bit of movement, a little bit of exercise. You know, if you look at what we've done over time for many hundreds of years, or maybe thousands, after a big meal, going for a walk is brilliant because you're going to get your motility of your stomach going. You're going to get everything moving. You're going to make those glucose GLUT4 receptors move to the membrane, and you're going to soak up all the food. That's quite a little biohack you can do. A little bit of walking after you've eaten is pretty helpful. You don't have to. You don't have to do that, but it can help. Even a little bit of exercise before you eat, little walk, get your hunger going. Everyone knows that, don't they? That's going to get your appetite going. But it's also preparing your body, for absorbing glucose. So there's loads of ways of doing it. And if you do that, you're then reducing your blood glucose in your bloodstream, obviously. And that, therefore, when you eat, it's easier for it to be managed because there's more receptors on the membranes.
That is good stuff. I mean, I'm telling you, people, even some of the comments, talking about the content. Like I told them they was going to learn something good, not to miss it. If you weren't here, for all those that missed this and are watching the replay, I told you not to miss it. It's good stuff. And I enjoy it, man. And things like that are critical because so many people are struggling with some of those key little things, and that may be the one thing that somebody takes away from here that changes their ability to get to their goal and get to where they're trying to get to. That's great stuff. The consistency.
Sean, sorry to interrupt, but
no, go ahead.
I'll always do another interview if people have missed it and they say, "Oh, I'd like to have asked this question." Just get the questions in and we'll go through them. I have no problem with that. None at all.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And I love working together with you as well. Good people, good info, good fellowship, good time. If anybody in this watching right now has any more questions or anything, just put a Q by it, throw it in the comments, and we will try to get to it before we wrap it up here in a little while. But yeah, man, it's so much, man, because that's literally that's how I learned how to get to where I was going, was by watching people, like yourself, that's going out there making this content all the time. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with, like you coaching, Raymond, Emily, there's so many people out there that's what they do. Maybe you're out there watching this and you've been considering that, and you just need to, jump in and get some coaching, do a consultation or do whatever, that's, I'm not saying you got to do it for 10 years. Call and get in touch with them, man. These guys, that's what they do. They're great at it. And, it may be the one thing, it may get you set off on the right foot, because the trajectory of where we're going to end up is set by where we start, right? If we start off on the right foot with our trajectory lined up towards the goal, that we got a better chance of hitting that goal, right?
Yeah, and I think there's so many influencers out there, and I understand because they're looking for a broad audience. Will say, right, you've got to do this. You've got to do 80-20, 80% fat, 20% protein. That might not be suitable for many people. Like I say, if they've had a problem with their gallbladder, if they can't eat enough, like that Lulu Bug was saying, it's very individual. Yes, those broad brushes will help most people, and carnivore is not that complicated. But I think if you're unsure of anything or something's not working quite right, your toilet habits might be upsetting you. How do you deal with friends and family? There's so many nuances to it. Because, if I offer coaching, someone might message and say, well, surely you're just going to tell me to eat steak. And I say, okay, you've obviously emailed me because there's something that's not working for you. So are you eating steak? And if you are, then there's obviously something else that we need to talk about. And there's always something more. Yes, it's a really simple way of eating. I think you do get intuitive. You can listen to your hunger and satiety signals. Exercise is just make it easy for yourself. Just make it hard, like you did. Right, I've been laying on the couch, so now I'm not going to do that 3 times a day or whatever. I'm going to get up for 2 minutes. Real simple stuff. And then maybe I'll do 3 minutes, and maybe I'll do it one more time. And it is really that simple. You've got to keep telling try and think of it. Your central nervous system is like the overseer. It's looking at all the things you're doing. And that's why, if there's a problem, you feel anxious and you get the fight or flight, or if you're not eating enough, your tummy will grumble and rumble and tell you, and you'll feel faint or whatever. So you've got to tell your central nervous system, this is a new environment. This is what I'm doing. All right. So I'm going to get off my chair and I'm going to eat these things, and it will work out what needs to be done. I mean, it's the body's incredible. So
absolutely,
but coaching helps because most people have specific things that's bothering them. So
I agree.
There is a question there. Is it bad to eat butter with everything? Is there too much fat
right there?
To a certain ratio?
My friend Amber and Dan, they got a great channel as well. You guys check them out. Is it bad to eat butter with everything? Is that too much fat? Is there a certain ratio?
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah. Well, is it bad to eat butter with everything? Well, you don't have to eat butter with everything. I would struggle with a fatty piece of lamb to add butter because I don't think you'd need to be honest. It's nice to add butter. I think it's tasty. Some things have butter in it, like scrambled egg. I tend to put butter in the pan and scramble the egg with the butter, so I don't tend to add butter. Whereas my wife has a little bit of extra butter because she just likes that to melt in there. So don't forget taste, by the way. We're not always talking about health. If you feel butter makes everything taste a bit better, like a little bit of butter on your steak, then I think that's great. Can you have too much fat? Yes, definitely, but it's really difficult. So the Minnesota prison experiment is a real experiment with real people. You couldn't do this now because it's unethical, apparently. But in the 50s, when they ran this experiment, they split the prison in half, and they gave half the inmates. They could eat as much as they like, and it was carbohydrate based, and the other half was as much as they like, and it was protein and fat based. And at the end of the study, they saw that the prisoners who had carbohydrates ate in excess of their daily requirements by about 8,000 calories. I'm not a big fan of calories, but everyone understands them. So by about 8,000 calories. And the fat and protein group overate by 838 calories. So 10 times as much could be eaten by the carbohydrate group. So Is there such a thing as too much fat? Yes, but it's very difficult to do it. That's one of the big things about this way of eating. So yeah, you can have too much fat. You can have too much fat if your bile production isn't good as well. So it ends up in your stools, for instance. And is there a certain ratio? Well, an egg has, by weight, a 1-to-1 ratio of protein to fat. A ribeye has pretty much a 1-to-1. And in fact, all the whole foods, it's pretty much 1-to-1 by weight. So I think if I was starting carnivore, for instance, I wouldn't worry too much about adding fats. I would just eat the eggs. I would eat the bacon. I would eat the beef. And if you feel like you want a bit more fat, and I think going back to what I said about like somebody of 50 who's had a low fat diet for many years, you might have a debt to pay back. Your body will be crying out for the fats. It makes every single membrane. It's precursors for all of your hormones. All your fat soluble vitamins need fat. So there may be a case for your health. You need a bit more initially, but I don't think there's a certain ratio. I think go by weight, 1 by 1, and see how you go. Trial and error. Do a month. If you feel like your thyroid's not healing or you're not losing weight, then I know it sounds counterintuitive, maybe up the fats and see what happens.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Thanks, Amber. I want to give a shout out to Lulu. Thank you for jumping in and becoming a member as well. I appreciate that support and love, and I appreciate you for it. Thank you, friend. Let's see if we got another one. binge eater, on and off carnivore about every 7 to 10 days for a sugar binge. Suggestion, my weight loss. Otherwise, I'm BBB and E. Well, falling off. I mean, I'll let you go. You can answer this, and I will as well. But what suggestion would you have for somebody that's falling off every 7 to 10 days with a sugar binge?
I'd want to know what's happening. What is what is triggering that? Is it? Can you just answer? Well, I've got a frog in my throat. I just want to clear my throat.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So like my best thing for you, my friend, is this. Like, number one, the responsibility of owning it. It's your house, and if you're doing the grocery shopping, you literally make the decisions on what comes in and what comes out. And if it's not there, make it as difficult as absolutely possible to access it. You're an adult, you can always access it. You can go get in your car, you can go however you want to and get it. But if you make it as aggravating and as inaccessible as you possibly can, to give yourself enough time that whenever you don't just walk over to the counter and have a cookie. You have to literally go get in your car, drive to the store, go inside, pick it out, pay for it, and come, whatever. Then that gives you it won't stop you, but it'll give you all that time and a little more of a chance for you to be like, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to stick to my guns. You've got to continuously break your own standard for yourself, and then to access the stuff. That would be my first thing. And secondly, stay accountable. If you're full of the things that you are supposed to have, i.e. the animal products, the beef, the whatever, the eggs, the butter, you get full on that to where nothing else looks good, then you're not going to want a lot of that stuff. Is that going to stop you? Probably. It may not. It may, though. It'll be one more step. You have to stack the odds in your favor every opportunity that you get in multiple different ways until that addiction can be broken. That's the best I got. Stephen, you got anything?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I mean, yeah, I think Beth said she doesn't keep anything in the house. So a follow-up question would be, well, what's happening? Are you going out to get this, whatever it is, that's sugary? There may be something in your life that's triggering that, some sort of anxiety. Does something happen every week where you've got a trip that you don't want to go to and you're dreading? And in the old days, that's how you used to get over it. So I'll give you a really silly example. When I first started doing the low carb, I used to go to the cinema, go to the movies a lot. And I always associated that with my pig out day. I'd have a hot dog and I'd have a Coke. Now, even in my carnivore days, so 7 years later, when I go into a cinema, I still feel, I remember. I don't do it, but I remember it. So all I'm saying is there may be something that you associate with sugar last day of work, like a Friday afternoon at work or something. So you sort of really think what triggers you. And it could be anxiety, it could be some form of anxiety. It could be something like, an emotional reaction rather than a physical. I doubt you're hungry. I don't think that's what you're saying. I think you just feel like you need to do it. And I think you just need to dig deep and be really honest with yourself about what is making you happy. Are you unhappy in one part of your life? And it could be a hard truth. And once you get to the bottom of why you feel that you need to eat sugar, then you can control it. It's a bit like debt. I always like to try analogies that are not food related, just to get the point across. If you're at home and you've got lots of debts and letters are coming to you and you just hide them in a cupboard or something, that's not going to help it. The moment you write to the company and you take control and say, look, I haven't got the money, we need to do something. The moment you take control and front up and say there's an issue here, that issue becomes much easier to deal with. So I think try and find out what's triggering you. Keep a diary of your moods or something. So it could be that, it could be the weather, it could be something at work. You don't need sugar. And if you're feeling fatigued, then look at how you're eating and maybe adapt your time. So some people do really well if they eat first thing in the morning and midday. well, that might not be working for you. It might be all right for 6 days. By the 7th day, that's not working for you. So you could shift your times when you're eating, because to digest protein, you need 5 times the amount of energy than you do to digest carbs. So you could be having a lovely meal in the morning and that's okay, but by the second meal, it's too much for you and it's actually fatiguing you. And therefore you might think, I need a bit of sugar here. Just give me that bit of zing. Like some people need coffee, you know? So it could be that as well. You're just not eating the right amount at the right time. So just go through everything and think, well, what's the thing here? Am I always doing the sugar binge after my second meal? Is it always after I've done that? So, I mean, I agree with Sean. I think if you've eaten enough, you tend not to have these binges. But for some people where it is the emotional component or, just eating at the wrong time and you just feel a little bit low energy and it's at the time you need the most energy, it's just an easy thing to try because that's worked in the past. But it's always short term. So you need to get down to exactly what's going on.
Absolutely. Good stuff. And let's see, we'll cover one. What happens if you eat too much fat? Does it turn to carbs like too much protein?
Well, no, fat is digested very differently. In fact, it goes through the lymphatic system and it's divvied out in a different way. But it will go to the things that it needs to go to. So like I say, fat soluble vitamins and precursors for hormones and stuff like that. But at some point, it's going to be reformulated in the liver, and it's probably going to end up stored as fat. But it isn't like you eat the fat and it goes straight on you. That's not how it works. So there's a great deal of processing in between, and it's very unlikely that you're going to overeat fat to the point where it's going to end up being stored as fat. That isn't really what we see. We tend to see people eating fat and losing body fat.
I can tell you what happens when I do. when I overeat the fat, I spend most of the day in the bathroom. Honestly, it runs straight through me. When I have too much fat, I know it. If I feel like I'm having an issue with going to the bathroom, add a little extra fat or a little extra magnesium, and I don't have any more problems.
It's cool.
Oh, good. One more. We'll take one more, and then I know it's getting late for you. And let's see. What do you think about beef protein powder?
I think it's great, actually. I think it's really good, really handy for cooking. We use Protomars snacks.co.uk in the UK. They do a beef protein powder, and it's really good for things like where you just use flour, where you've got ground beef and you're making a beef burger, and in the old days you put a bit of flour on it to help it bind. You can use the beef protein powder. You can make it's not just beef, there's also chicken. It doesn't tend to have much of a flavor, so you can make breads and stuff out of it. I think it's really good. You can make drinks with it. It's absolutely excellent. So if anyone's in the UK and I'm not on commission, if you go on that website, protomars /snacks.co.uk and put the UK Carnivore as a code, you get 20% off your first order. And they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. But it's good because if you look at like keto and they have all these almond flours and stuff like that, they're okay. But actually, it's not as good as having something like beef protein or chicken protein.
Absolutely, that's cool. I've actually never used it, so I don't know. I haven't used any protein powder. Well, I take that back. I used the whey protein powder years ago from like GNC when I was working out. I would take the whey protein shakes and replace a meal with it, and then ate salad the rest of the day, trying to starve my way to help. And it didn't work for me. But nevertheless, I could see the uses for it. But like I said, I've never tried it. I just want to say thanks, man. It's been a great conversation, a lot of great information. I could continue talking to you forever. I always have a great time. It's a pleasure to talk with you and have you on. And I know that the people that showed up today are thankful, and those who see this video in the future will be as well. So if you don't mind, just tell everybody where they can find more about you and or get in touch with you. And the floor is yours, and we'll close it out.
That's great. Thank you. Well, the website is theUKcarnivore.com. So that's nice and simple. You find me on Instagram, the UK Carnivore, Twitter, the UK Carnivore. It's going to get a bit boring here, but basically that's how you find me. If you want to email me, it's zerocarbcoach@gmail.com.
Absolutely. And until next time, like I said, share this content like wherever you're watching it, whether it be on his channel or on mine. Hit that like button, hit the share button, share this with a friend you think it might benefit, that it might help, that might be considering some life changes, and it may be the thing that changed their life, maybe the thing that changed somebody you love's life. I know it changed my life whenever I found out about it. You never know what kind of impact you're going to make with the influence that you carry every day. Until the next time, I appreciate you guys watching, tuning in. I love you guys, and we'll see you next time. Stay strong and keep pushing forward. We'll see you.